Hey, just wanted to talk about this new platform I've been working on for predator flies, musky flies, bigger streamers. Um, Hugely inspired by Nicholas Bauer, by Nightmare, musky flies, musky fool, all the bucktail glide baits and Bufords out there, and Game Changers, Plain Chocolate's platform. Um, and Just kind of ended up doing my own thing. Started a few years ago. Started tying really big flies, much more substantial, lots of material, and those are great. I caught muskie on those, and they're absolutely just massive, and they're as you can see, there's a lot of drag. It's hard to pull these through the water. Over time, you can fatigue pretty quickly with these. I'll save these for my Chippewa 12 weight two-hander, and in those cases where I want to fish a really big fly, create a big disturbance, I can use them. But this is born out of a need for something smaller, something more easy to cast and fish, and I ended up with two versions of it. I tied at the end of that series last year, or about a year and a half ago, and I've been fishing them ever since and gravitating towards them. I got a chance to fish this guy in the spring, had a muskie, chase it, muskie, eat it, and then this fall had a muskie eat this fly. And really, the whole time I was fishing it, even though it looks beat up, it was just swimming incredibly well. Just very convincing to me that this was the new sort of platform, new direction I wanted to go. So just tied one last night. Wanted to share it with you guys, and a little different. Filled it out a little bit more, and share with you the mechanics of it. So a long time ago, Nicholas Bauer put together a video. It's like his own version of a jerk fly using these Pagetin magic heads, the largest size, the R4, and I kind of R14, sorry, and I kind of got inspired by that tie that he did, and these are actually hard to find. So I bought up a bunch, just found them in various different websites and stuff, and I have a little stockpile of them. I'm a big fan of the way the way they move a fly. And you just kind of put them in the head, and it just helps build a fly that just is unpredictable in the way it jerks. But expanding on that, it's a single hook. It's got the long shank in the front here, kind of the glide bait method, or the jerk fly platform, with a shorter hook, the Arex universal curve, and then the magic head really adds to the unpredictability of this fly, and the narrower, sort of high and tight, I guess as Gunner would say, head makes this a quicker moving, darting, kind of jerking platform. Pacchiarini, hugely inspirational. His materials are incredible. These saddle tails are XXL slim. Just fantastic movement out of those, and shimmer and vibrations, and these wave tails on the side just allow the water to kind of glide over and have this fly kind of do that jerk motion and shoot through the water a little quicker, and help kind of guide it. It's all just hydrodynamics. You have the water bouncing off the head, hitting the body, creating these kind of vibrations that are all triggers for these fish. So just to get into it, got all the materials here. Just wanted to show you what it is I'm using exactly. And I got this, start off with a 20 millimeter shank, and throw that in the vise. I use a lot of Nightmare musky flies material. They're Titan dubbing, but I'll add my own recipe of flash. Like I'll take their wavelength flash, I'll add it to the dubbing. I'll use a couple of different blends of it, kind of mix that in there, and then if I wanted more flash to that. So that's what I did here. Folded it over, tied it back, and that's a little spacer for the tails. In the original two that I tied, I just used two saddle tails, but this one I did three, which is what I was doing with the bigger flies, and I kind of like that having more. It just fills it in a little bit better, and you can kind of have like an odd one in there. So side by side, and then one on top. wrap these Nightmare musky flies makes a bunch of brush material. This is their flash and fiber. I think this one was just the regular, but also has flash in it as well. Just not as thick or not as present as the flash and fiber version. So I make my own brushes with the Oasis brush table, which I really dig. Super easy to use. Wrap it in, trim it down. So you're trimming these to taper. I love bucktail. I think it looks amazing. I think it casts incredibly well. I'm just not really. I'm trying to avoid using it because I don't want to get into something new that I have to kind of really figure out. And I like synthetics because they're consistent, they're easily available. You can blend them well. The coloring's great. You can add flash to them, and as long as I'm happy with synthetics, I'm not going to really make that switch. Although I did have a chance to cast some amazingly well-tied John Seals flies, and they swam incredibly well. And man, it was just such a joy to cast them. But this for me is kind of the way I'm going, and it's really. I also enjoy the way this fly swims and acts in the water. And it's a little different than anything I've ever used. So, anything I've ever fished, it just, even like just a normal jerk changer, this acts differently. And I'll kind of show you the mechanics behind that. Second shank is a 35 millimeter. These shanks are light. I like to use the lighter versions of them because I want to add the weight where in certain key areas. So I'll choose where the weight points are, rather than the fly itself just having a weight to it, a natural weight to it. That's how I like to kind of, I guess a rule that I like to have with the flies is, you put the weight in key areas, and then try to tie with lighter materials, so that those weight points do make a difference. More white brush, flash fiber, and then transition to a chartreuse. At the end of this piece here, I did use a little Nightmare musky flies, Titan dubbing, and just kind of took a thin veil and folded over top and bottom, not unlike the head, which is kind of what you'd see like Matt at Adaptive Fly do with his heads. Mine's just a little more sculpted, and so that's just more color, more flash added to that. Then I secure this shank to the Ahrex Universal Curve 4.0 with a actual shank, which is my favorite way to do it. Tie that down, secure it there, and then I just did a lead wrap keel where I wrap one layer, and then I came back up and did another 3/4 over that layer, wrapped over it, and then secured that cured it with resin, Solarez, the clear hard stuff. Chartreuse brush blended with a yellow brush, so you got the UV sort of kind of real strong in this area, but then it kind of fades as I blend it with a yellow brush, and then eventually just go to yellow, and then eventually to brown. And it's a lighter brown than this brown here, so it's more of a copper. It's a lighter brown. The way you blend them is you just tie in the brush you want to blend with, go over with like the yellow, stop at a certain point, then take a bodkin, go back to the brush you tied in, the brown, and every turn you sort of comb through, and so you end up blending the two and creating a more natural shift of color. These are synthetic. So this is that's the old version there. You can see that's a little more clumsy of a tie. If I wanted to thin this out, which I don't think I'll need to, but I could just pull on these and thin them out. I mean, it's just, you just literally can trim it down. You can pull out fibers. You can manipulate these in lots of ways, which I'll show you too towards the end here. Another little step I do to kind of tweak them. So I get to the end here. This last shank is the longest one, and that is a 55 millimeter. And again, same kind of thinness. It feels very flimsy when you put it on there, it being that long, but that's a good thing. Right at the end of this this lip part, which would be facing down, I would tie in one of these massive, it says medium on them, but they're actually really big, plastic fly rattles, super loud. And you can hear that there, and tie that on the bottom. And takes up a lot of real estate on the shank, but once you tie that in, then I'll start wrapping my brush over it. And you can see with this one, I actually added flash, so I actually tied in, the first brush I tied in was this Thunderstruck in copper. Wrapped the flash and fiber brown, and then went back in and wove in the copper flash just to add a little bit more. And that goes to the end of the rattle. And then I take the magic head, slide that on. You can see there's a nipple there at the end. I trim that about halfway down. So those are just a little long, those tips. Trim it about halfway and then secure it. It pushes the fibers back, comes to the point where it's just touching the rattle right here, but it's straight on there, straight and even. Then I'll tie in the wave tails and a little bit of flash up top, just doubled over and tapered. And then a black brush. You can see the brush here. Tie that back with some real estate towards the eye, and then take the Titan dub and 60-40, tie that again for a taper up and top and bottom, just to fill in the head. And then before I put resin on it, I like to glue my eyes on, and these are actually quite big eyes. These are the 15mm living eyes. And then take some resin. I take the flex resin stuff, flex finish, and I'll really sculpt that head, kind of push it in there really well. You can see it's flexible, but it's, you know, it's carved in, or sorry, molded to cut through the water high and tight. The eyes help with that. So putting them up front is a method, because you have the cone behind it. So I don't want to put the eyes back here over the cone. I want the eyes to kind of be a narrow entry in the water, or a narrow like point where it can kind of dart quickly through the water and not be something bulky that stops the fly. So it moves fast, it darts, it moves all kinds of directions. The water comes over the cone, over the wave tails, and hits the fly and moves the fly and articulates the fly in all different types of unpredictable ways with very minimal stripping movement. So you can really animate this fly and not move it very far, or you can move it really far by changing your stripping method. You can do all kinds of things with this fly. It has a life to it that I feel like you don't get with a lot of other standards out there. And it's more than just a jerk or a glide bait. It really is something uniquely animated, and with the tails moving, it just creates so much frenetic sort of energy that I feel like it just triggers these fish. I'll talk a little bit about the colorway that this is my most confident colorway. I added the brown for this one. This one here was just the yellow, chartreuse, white, and black. But black is probably black and white are probably two most popular musky colors. Obviously, yellow, chartreuse, and brown or sucker brown is another very common and popular musky color. So it's got every color in it. If you think of fish chasing this fly, it's going to get bombarded with different colors depending on what its view is, and depending on how you strip this, it's going to like look backwards. It's going to go all over the place, and they're going to get all the colors of the rainbow of their food palette at some point, looking at this fly, chasing this fly. And I feel like this combination here is just a winner. It's just something that I feel so confident in stain water, in clear water, in all scenarios. So this is gonna, I think the majority of the flies I'm gonna tie are gonna sort of represent this color transition. I might add less flashy wave tails and saddle tails to it, but for the most part, this is my favorite, and I might experiment with different proportions of colors, or depending on really stained situations and whatnot. But this I mean, I've had the most luck on something along these lines so far in Lake St. Clair and up north, the waters that I fish. I wanted to touch on just a few ways to fish this fly, and any fly, just a few tips in your stripping. I fish a lot of people, and fishing predator flies for fish that chase and eat things. There's a lot of things you can do to really up and back to the stripping. A lot of people hold the rod with their dominant hand, so I'm right-handed, and they strip with the left hand, and that's the bulk of their stripping comes from the left hand. You can do all kinds of weird patterns with your left hand. You can change it up. You can change your distance. You have a full arm's length to go. But with musky, I feel like getting more than that full one arm's length of distance is kind of critical, and so at times you might want to go farther, or greater distance would be more of a reason for a muskie to charge and eat this fly further out. And when your stripping pattern is kind of boring, or it's the same, it's just moving a few feet at a time and doing its thing side to side, a muskie is going to size that fly up and it's going to follow it, and your eats are going to come from the boat side when you can really kind of figure eight and really make this fly look alive and look like it's really running from the fish. And that's great. If your figure eights game is good, most people don't really have a great figure eight game, including myself. I tend to fall apart. I make a lot of mistakes, and something I'm working on all the time. But thank God most of my eats come from way out there. And I think that is partially due to the way that I strip, and I'll use my right hand. So the right hand, I can double that length. I can get a full arm's length of my left and a full arm's length of my right by separating the two. And it's kind of hard to see with this view, but as I just switch the camera here to a wider angle, but as I strip, I'm moving both hands apart, and I can do that all the way to the extent of my arms, and maybe I'll make another video on that. But the rhythm of that, catching up to the fly line and all that stuff is something that you get over time when you practice that. But you can really move this fly straight and fast and for a longer distance, 2 arms lengths. Or you can kind of use a tarpon set method where you strip and you pull back on the rod and get more power out of your strip. And finding the rhythm, finding the timing, and doing it to where you don't have a ton of slack after that is done, after each strip. Picking it up takes skill and practice, but that really will make a difference in animating the fly that you're fishing and creating a triggered eat way out there. And why that's important to me is because when you have the fish at the boat, you have way more of an opportunity to spook that fish, or for that fish to kind of give up on the chase. And you know, when you're getting that eat way out there, it's just the fish and the fly. So yeah, by getting that eat way out there, or 15 feet away from the boat, as opposed to in the figure eight or boat side, your success rate just goes up. If you can convince that fish to commit before it falls all the way to the boat, you're going to have way more success in your musky hookups. And so this fly is as great as it is, by doing all kinds of triggers, swimming up and down. The way you fish it, or the way you fish any fly, will really change your success. I'm a true believer in that. This fly moves a lot with minimal stripping, so if you move it just a little bit, it really kind of does crazy stuff. But you can pull really hard and move it longer distance, and as you do that, it's just going to go straight, and it's not going to animate until you stop. That's when all the animation happens. So learning how to make this look tasty, make it look like a trigger, is you do that by watching it in clear water, and then you kind of try to remember your muscle memory of what you were doing to get that movement, and try to repeat that and try to get good at fishing the fly. That's an important factor there. Get good at fishing the fly that you're fishing. Another thing that happened with this fly kind of by mistake is I ended up hitting the trolling motor with it pretty hard on a cast, and it bent this really thin shank. All these shanks are bendable except for really the hook. And I found that the action changed on it. So now on these shanks, sometimes I'll just grab the head and I'll grab back here and I'll just pinch it and I'll bend it, in which I've already done. So I've put a kink in this shank, and that'll add to the action. If I could go back and tie this fly again, I would probably take one part that I was not really too happy with was just the stark contrast from this black to the flash here, the shininess of the flash. And so I would take some of this the Titan dubbing in brown, and I would veil this flash a little bit. I went on their website, made an order today, and I learned that they had some hydrophobic or not so hydrophobic dubbing. It's I guess a different type of dubbing they're using. I can't remember what they're calling it, but it's less hydrophobic than the Titan, and that got me thinking about the Titan dubbing being hydrophobic. And by adding more material to the top, it's like adding foam or something that rights a fly in the water. So just every little action you do to a fly, key point, key weight points, all this stuff, little bends, adds to the action of the fly, and you have to kind of think about that stuff. That's important. So yeah, with the keel, with the rattle, with the eyes, with the narrower head, this fly gets down. It's not a buoyant fly. I can thin it out. I can just pull on these fibers, and you can see here, you just pull them out, and you can thin it out a little bit if it's too bulky. I can change it over time. It's manipulatable. But just all in all, I've been super, super happy with it. So just wanted to share it with everybody. Thanks a lot.